She was invisible to everyone in that hotel, just another black maid in a crisp uniform, quietly cleaning the rooms of the rich and powerful. But that night, in a billionaire's penthouse, she opened a safe and found more money than she'd ever seen in her life. Her hands trembled, not from greed, but from desperation. Her son lay in a hospital bed dying, while doctors refused to treat him without payment. In that moment, she had to choose: obey the rules of a world built against her, or break them to save her child. What followed shocked everyone. Amina had worked at the Grand Rose Hotel for nearly 6 years. Every day she wore the same pressed uniform, tied her hair back, and smiled politely at guests who rarely looked her in the eye. She was the kind of worker who made herself invisible because invisibility was safe. But behind her composed exterior, her life was unraveling. Her 5-year-old son, Daniel, had been diagnosed with a rare condition that required urgent surgery. The cost, more than she could earn in a decade of cleaning other people's sheets. She begged, borrowed, and prayed, but every door closed in her face. When she asked the hospital about a payment plan, they shook their heads. When she sought government help, the paperwork piled up with no results. And when she asked her wealthy employer for an advance, he laughed. That night, Amina was assigned to clean the billionaire's penthouse. The room radiated excess: chandeliers, marble floors, untouched caviar on silver trays. It was another world, a world that mocked her poverty. As she dusted the shelves, she noticed a small black safe built into the wall. She almost ignored it. Almost. But then Daniel's face flashed in her mind. The tubes, the machines, his small chest rising weakly. Her fingers hesitated. She wasn't a thief. She was a mother. And mothers do what they must. The safe clicked open with surprising ease. The billionaire must have trusted his own invincibility too much to set a complicated code. Inside lay neat stacks of $100 bills, bundled tightly, glowing under the lamp. Amina's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just money, it was life, it was hope, it was Daniel's future. She stood frozen, the weight of centuries pressing down on her. She thought about her grandmother, who had worked as a maid for white families and had once said, "We clean their mess, but they'll never see us as clean." She thought about her own life, how she scrubbed floors until her knees ached, only to still be told she wasn't good enough, wasn't deserving. Her mind raced. If she took the money, she could pay for Daniel's surgery. But if she was caught, she'd lose everything, not just her job, but her freedom. And worse, she'd confirm the stereotype they already believed, that black women like her were dishonest, desperate, dangerous. Still, she couldn't walk away. She reached into the safe and took a bundle, $10,000, enough to admit Daniel to surgery. Her hands shook as she slid it into her cleaning cart, hiding it beneath folded towels. That night, she hurried to the hospital. The money was accepted without question. Daniel was prepped for surgery. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. But Amina's relief was short-lived. The billionaire discovered the missing money the next morning. Furious, he demanded answers. The hotel launched an investigation. Cameras reviewed, staff questioned. And eventually, the truth led back to Amina. She was summoned, surrounded by managers, hotel security, and finally, the billionaire himself. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a cruel smile. He didn't ask why she took it. He didn't care. To him, she was just the maid, the thief. "You've disgraced this hotel," he sneered. "People like you never learn." Amina's heart pounded, but she didn't beg. She only thought of her son fighting for his life. The billionaire demanded she be arrested. Security moved in, ready to drag her out like a criminal. But before they could, a call came through. The media had picked up the story. Somehow, word had leaked about the maid who took money not for herself, but to save her dying child. Cameras gathered outside the hospital where Daniel lay. Strangers began asking questions. Why had the hospital refused to treat him without upfront payment? Why had a billionaire hoarded obscene wealth while a child nearly died for lack of care? The billionaire's fury turned to panic. He hadn't expected the public to side with her. He hadn't expected the world to see the truth, that this wasn't theft. It was survival. Amina stood trembling, security still holding her arms. But in that moment, she realized something powerful. For the first time in her life, She wasn't invisible. The world was watching. And then came the turning point. Instead of pressing charges, the billionaire staged a press conference. He painted himself as a savior, claiming he had decided to forgive the maid. But those who watched could see the cracks, the arrogance, the cruelty behind his words. As the cameras flashed, Amina lifted her head. She didn't smile. She didn't thank him. She simply stood tall, holding the gaze of a man who had tried to destroy her. The crowd erupted in whispers. In that silence, the story had already changed. Daniel survived the surgery. His small body healed, his laugh returned, and his mother's love had carried him through the darkest nights. Amina lost her job, but she gained something far more valuable, her dignity, and a voice that could no longer be silenced. Her story spread across the country. For some, it was a tale of desperation and crime, but for many, it exposed a deeper truth, how poverty, racism, and greed collide to force impossible choices on those who have the least. People began asking, why should a child's life depend on money? Why are the poor punished for survival while the rich are praised for cruelty? The billionaire tried to move on, but his name would forever be tied to the maid who revealed his hypocrisy. He had wanted her erased, humiliated, broken. Instead, she became a symbol. Amina didn't see herself as a hero. She was simply a mother. But in her quiet defiance, she held up a mirror to society, and the reflection was impossible to ignore. And so the question lingers. How many more Aminas are out there? Unseen, unheard, forced to make choices no one should ever face?